Hello students, today we are going to look at the third module topic deadlock detection. In the previous class of third module, we had already learned about deadlock prevention as well as deadlock avoidance. In deadlock avoidance, we learned the banker's algorithm which had two steps, safety algorithm as well as the resource request algorithm. And there are cases in where some systems do not have the opportunity or do not have the facility, you can say, to prevent the deadlock or even maybe avoid the deadlock. So in such cases, what they can do is they can do either that is the first thing they can do is they do a detection algorithm. That is, they can if that is they allow the system to enter the deadlock state because they do not know how to prevent or to avoid it. The only thing they can do is that allow the deadlock to occur. So if the deadlock occurs, then the next thing that they can do is they can detect that the deadlock has occurred or not once they detect it, and then what is the mechanism for recovering from such a situation. Okay, so we know that prevention is better than cure, but since nothing is possible, they allow that particular state to happen, that is deadlock to happen. And once a deadlock happen, how we can detect that it has occurred or not, and how we can recover from a situation and continue with the rest of the processing. That is how this particular algorithm works like. So in order to do this, you need to have algorithms that detect whether a deadlock has occurred, and we need to have algorithms to detect whether how to recover from it. So we'll look at a situation where we have, we all already know what is a resource allocation graph. We have already learned that. I'll just show you a figure of a resource allocation graph so that this is an example of a resource allocation graph where you remember you had some square or rectangle kind of structures which represent the resources, and we have a circular kind of entities known as processes, and we have edges, different types of edges, that is whether it is holding the resource, whether it is claiming the resource, or whether it is requesting for a resource. There are different kinds of edges. Now based on this resource allocation graph, we are going to look into deadlock detection is one of the methods. So one thing is that this deadlock detection algorithm actually has two different stages of algorithm. One is for single instance of each resource type. Suppose that you have only single instance. If you remember a resource allocation graph, if it had a single instance only, we put a single box or a dot shape inside this rectangle like this. Okay. If you had multiple resources, we would be putting something like this. So this is the difference between single instance of each resource type, and this is multiple instances of the same resource type. So one box represents a resource type, and the inner smaller boxes represent the number of instances. So we'll be looking at it in two ways. One of the way is what I told you, the single instance case, and the second way is whether when there are multiple instances of these. Okay. Now, let us look at the first case, that is single instances. So if single instances of each resource type is there, what can be done? So what we do here is something known as a wait for graph. That is, we are actually modifying the resource allocation graph, and we are renaming it, or we are calling it as a wait for graph. So if all the resources that you have only single instances, then if you want to define a deadlock detection algorithm, what we use is known as a wait for graph. Now, what is this wait for graph? It is actually a resource allocation graph itself. The only thing is we remove the resources. We know that resources are represented by a box. We remove these resources and we only add nodes known as processes. We know that processes are represented by the or the simple circles, and you can say these nodes are processes, and that is the only thing that is contained in a wait for graph. So suppose that you have a edge. Okay, you have an edge from the process pi to pj, then you can say that that pi is waiting for the second process pj to release a resource, the one that pi needs. So in simple words, it is like this. Suppose that Pj is holding a resource R. So say this is the resource R and Pj is holding the resource. So when some resource is being held by a process, we draw it like this. The arrow goes from the resource to the process. Okay, so this is Pj. And Pi is another resource, another process which requires this particular resource. Okay, that is, you have a resource R which is being held by Pj. So the arrow goes from the resource to the process. And there's another process Pi which requires a request, okay, for this particular resource. So instead of having this two directional way, what we can do is we can directly denote it like this. That is Pi arrow Pj, means that Pi is waiting for Pj to release this particular resource so that Pi can have it. Understood. So in this wait for graph, I already told you there's no resources diagram in that. We do not add the nodes known as resources. We only have nodes that are processes. So you will be having only Pi and Pj. And if an arrow between Pi and Pj occurs, that means that Pi is waiting for Pj to release some resource that the Pi requires. The Pi resource requires. Okay. So you can say an edge Pi to Pj exists in a wait for graph if and only if the corresponding resource allocation graph has two edges, that is from Pi to Rq and from Rq to Pj for some resource Rq. So that is what I have drawn over here. I'll just show it again. Okay, that is, suppose that we have a resource Rq and there is a process Pi that is requesting for the resource RQ, and where the resource RQ is already held by Pj. Now this is a situation that occurs in this particular step. That is, in a resource allocation graph. In a resource allocation graph, you can see it will be represented by two edges. One is from Pi to Rq, that is like this, and the second one is from Rq to Pj, that is like this. Okay, so we have two sets of edges. One is requesting, other one is already being held by the other process. And this is what happens in a resource allocation graph. And this thing we are going to change by removing the resource in a wait for graph. In a wait for graph, what will be left behind is only the process Pi and the process Pj. So we can directly draw it as Pi arrow Pj. Now, what does that indicate? It indicates that Pi is waiting for Pj to release some process so that Pi can acquire it. Okay, so that is the basic idea behind this entire thing. So now what happens here is when you draw this wait for graph, you have to periodically invoke an algorithm that checks whether there is a cycle in the graph. Because naturally in the Banger's algorithm also, before that, where in the resource allocation graph that we learned, we have already seen that when there exists a cycle, we can understand that there exists a deadlock. So that is a basic idea in wait for graph also. That is, if there is a cycle in the wait for graph, that means there exists a deadlock. So what is our aim here is because we could not prevent a deadlock, we could not avoid a deadlock has already happened. So the next thing is that if we have only single instance of a resource like this, if you have only single instance of a resource, then we can detect a deadlock using the wait for graph by looking at whether there is a cycle in the graph. That is the basic idea. Now suppose that n is a number of vertices in the graph, then the order of number of operations will be n square. Okay, now let us look at an example. Now in this example, let us start from P1. Okay. We'll look through each and every process and we'll start from P1. Now, P1 is a process. P1 is requesting for a resource R1, but which is actually held by, you can see this arrow from a resource to a process indicates it has been already allocated to. It is, so R1 is allocated to P2. Now, P2 also requests for a resource R3. By looking at this arrow, we can understand that. But R3, the resource is already allocated to P5, or P5 is holding R3. Similarly, P2 is also requesting for R4, but R4 is already held by the resource P3. Similarly, P2 is also requesting for the resource R5, but R5 is already held by the process, that is P4. So P2 requests R3, which is held by P5. P2 requests a resource R4, which is held by P3. P2 also requests a resource R5, which is held by P4. Okay, so these are the processes and those are the resources. Now, similarly, we can look at P3 also. P3 is requesting for R5, which you saw in the previous case. R5 was already held by P4, the same as in the case of P2. Now, let us look at the last one. So P1 is over, P2 is over, P3 is over. Now, look at P4. P4 is requesting for a resource, that is R2, but R2 is already held by P1. So you can see they all are in a kind deadlock kind of situation, because unless the other one releases it, this one will not get it. Got it? So that is the basic idea. Now, when we look at our P5, P5 has not requested anything. So all the four processes P1, P2, P3, P4 have some or the other in a deadlock situation. Now, what is our wait for graph? This is a case of a resource allocation graph. So the similar pattern, we have converted it into a wait for graph in another manner. How did we convert it? By removing all the resources. We remove all these square boxes. Okay, we remove all the resources. So by removing the resources, we are left behind with only the processes. Now let us look at each one of them. Suppose P1 arrow P2. What does that indicate? That is, P1 has requested for some resource R1, which was actually held by P2. So we can directly draw an arrow from P1 to P2, indicating that P1 is waiting for P2 to release some resource. Similarly, P2 is waiting for P5 to release some resource, which was that resource R3. P2 is waiting for P3 to release some resource. What was the resource? It was R4, this one. And so on. P3, P4, P2, P4, and P4, P1, so on. So let us erase all this. Now, what is our aim here is we have to detect whether there's a cycle in this particular graph, wait for graph. If there is a cycle, that means there exists a deadlock. Okay, so you can see whether there's a cycle. The first cycle that we can see is from P1 to P2 and P2 to P3, P3 to P4, and again we are back at P1. So let's draw that here. P1 to P2, P2 to P3, P3 to P4, and P4 to P1. This is one cycle. Let us look at another cycle. P1 to P2, P2 to P4, P4 to P1. So it becomes like this: P1, P2, P4, and P1. So these are some of the cycles. So if there exists at least one or more cycles, you can say this particular situation of the processes is in a deadlock state. Okay, so I hope this much is understood. Now, this was the case of single instances. So if you have only single instance, we can easily detect a deadlock by just visually looking at this graph. And in this graph, we can see because there's a cycle, there's a deadlock. That is a solution to it. Now, next stage is we have to recover from it. Now, this was in the case of single instance. Now, let us look at the second case, that is several instances. Suppose all of you know what is meant by a several instance. Several instance means you have a resource box like this, and you have multiple number of instances inside it. Say this is a printer. I told you have 5 instances of this printer, and so on. So you have to look at a particular resource type and its number of instances. So wait for graph will not work for such a scheme. So the wait for graph scheme is not applicable to resource allocation system with multiple instances of each resource type. So what we require here is several time varying data structures that are similar to what we learned in the Banger's algorithm. For introducing the Banger's algorithm, if you all revise it, you'll understand that there were different data structures that were introduced, either a one-dimensional array or a two-dimensional array, which helped in allocation, that is available, allocation, need, maximum. All these things were different kinds of data structures that were involved in solving of this deadlock avoidance or Banger's algorithm. So in this case, we'll be looking at 3 data structures specifically. The first one is available. Available is a vector of length m. That is, it is actually a one-dimensional array, you can say. It will be a one-dimensional array like this, and it goes from 0 to m minus 1. That is m minus 1, that is from 0, m entries are there. And you can see here m actually denotes the number of resources and n actually denotes the number of processes. So that is the same as in Banger's algorithm. So this is a vector of length m. That means available means what? Available means how many number of resources are available. That is what we are trying to track here. So how many number of resources of each kind? That is, if this is a resource type, this field represents a resource type, say printer. If there are 5 printers available, we write the number of instances in that first cell. That means of resource type 0, R0. R0 is a resource type. There are 5 instances of resource type 0. If R1 is another kind of resource, then I write the actual instances that are available. There are 2 instances of hard disk and so on. So 0, 1, 2, 3 to m minus 1 indicates the resource number or each type of resource. And inside that, whatever value we write is the instance or the number of availability of that particular instance after being allocated. What is remaining is the meaning of available. The next one is allocation. Allocation is actually a 2-dimensional array like this. You can see it will contain a number of rows as well as a number of columns. Okay, so it's a n by m matrix. It's a n by m matrix. Okay, so now let us look at that. So it is n by m. So 0 to n minus 1 and 0 to m minus 1, where n is the number of processes. So every row represents the process ID. Okay, suppose this is represented by the pointer named I. So I is equal to 0 means process number 0. I is equal to 1 means process number 1. I is equal to n minus 1 means process number n minus 1. Similarly, the columns represent the number of resources. So you can see the number of resources. Suppose it is represented by J, you say, then 0 is the resource number is 0, like the printer I said you before, this one. Similarly, a resource number 1, if it's the hard disk R1, then this is the second column representing that. Now, suppose you take any value, say this cell, if I'm taking this particular cell, 1, 0, okay, where I is equal to 1 and j is equal to 0, then you can say it contains a value k. What does 1, 0 indicate? 1, 0, if it indicates a k, that means there are k instances that has been allocated to each process, currently allocated. That is the basic idea here. So allocation is nothing but the number of resources of each type that has been currently allocated to each process. So which process are we talking about? P1. And which resource are we talking about? R0. So P1 to R0, there are k instances allocated. അതായത് P1 എന്നൊരു പ്രോസസ് ഉണ്ട്, അതിന് റിസോഴ്സ് ടൈപ്പ് 0 ഇപ്പൊ 5 ആണ് കൊടുത്തെങ്കിൽ if k is equal to 5, then that means 5 resources or 5 instances of that particular R0 has been given to P1. Okay, whatever I requested earlier in an earlier state, that has been given to me. Suppose that value is k, then that much is allocated. Now the next one is request. Request is also again a n by m matrix. That is indirectly, it is a 2-dimensional array. It looks similar to this. So here also, suppose I write request of ij, I 1, 0, if I write request of 1, 0, see like this, is equal to k. What does that mean? That is row number 1, cell number, column number 0. So this is the particular thing, this one. Now that is equal to k means what? How much more request that process requires. Okay, that is n by n matrix indicates the current request of each process. So which process are we talking about here? The first process P1. Which resource are we talking about here? R0. So P1 എന്നുള്ള ഒരു process, it requires R0 എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ ഒരു resourceന്റെ k instances അതിന് വേണം. That is, process P1 requires k instances of resource type R0. That is the third data structure. So 3 data structures available. What is the number of resources that are available or allocation, how much has been currently allocated to each process. Request means how much more it requires. Okay, that is what is the basic idea. How much more it has requested for. Maybe totally it requires much more, but how much it has requested for. That is our aim. Now let us look at the algorithm for detection. It's a similar algorithm to the safety algorithm that we learned in Banger's algorithm. And after running this algorithm, we can find out whether a deadlock has occurred or not. So we just have to detect whether a deadlock occurred or not. Now, the first step in this algorithm is we have to initialize two variables, work and finish. And where work is a simple kind of variable, but finish is an array. Okay, finish is an array for keeping track of whether any of the process has finished its execution. Say it's an array, right? So finish of I will indicate each cell value. It will be like this. So if finish of 0 is false means what? Process 0 has not finished. If finish of 3 is 0 means what? 0 alla false, sorry. If finish of 3 is false means what? That means process number 3 has not finished its task. If finish of 1 is true, that means what? Process number 1 has finished its task, and so on. So the first thing that we do here is we have to initialize the work variable. What is the work variable? Is initialized to the variable available. Available contains for each resource. Suppose you have 3 resources, A, B, C. And I'm saying I have 2 instances remaining of A, I have 0 instances of B, and I have 3 instances of C remaining. Okay, if you have something like this, then that means these are the, these are the 3 resources available, and these are the remaining instances of these 3 resources. Now that value is assigned to a work. Why are we doing that? Because we do not want to modify the original value of available. So we rename it to another variable named as work, because work is going to be changed in the program. See, in this algorithm, we're going to change the value of work. So we do not want to lose the original available ones. Okay, the value of the original availability. So that is why it is renamed to work. That is the only reason. Now the second step in this particular first step is for every process I 1 to n. We know n is the number of processes and m is the number of resources. For every process from 1 to n or from 0 to n minus 1, you can label it in your wish. Allocation of I is not equal to 0. Allocation is not equal to 0 means allocation is 0 means what? None of the resources has been allocated to any of the processes. That is the meaning of allocation is equal to 0. We are talking of allocation not equal to 0. That means some value is there. If some value is there, that means every process or at least one or more process has some resource. Okay, so when you're saying it is having some resource, we actually put the arrow in the reverse order. That is, some resources allocated or being held by some of the processes. If that is the case, that means allocation is not 0. That means finish is equal to false. Finish of that particular process, Pi, if the I process is equal to false. What does that indicate? That means currently it has not executed its entire task. The process I is still pending. പ്രോസസ്സിന്റെ ജോലി തീർന്നിട്ടില്ല, അപ്പൊ ഫിനിഷ് നമ്മൾ ഫോൾസ് ആക്കി വെച്ചു. അതിന് എന്തൊക്കെയോ റിസോഴ്സ് ഇപ്പോഴും ഹോൾഡ് ചെയ്ത് വെച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ പ്രോസസ് ഇപ്പോഴും ഫിനിഷ് ആയിട്ടില്ല. Now suppose that the second case you see, if allocation is equal to 0, allocation is equal to 0 means what? That is, none of the resources has been given to any of the processes. That is the meaning. So we are talking of a particular process Pi. So that is why we are talking of a particular process, say Pi, then it has not been, it is not holding any of the resources. That means it has completed a task. Nothing has been allocated to it. So it has completed a task. So we can make finish of that particular process as true. So this goes on for every process, ith process. So for every I from 1 to n or 0 to n minus 1, if nothing has been allocated, that means finish is true. If something is allocated, that means still it has pending work to do. That is why it is still not 0. So this is simple if then else thing. So if allocation is not 0, then finish is false, else finish is equal to true. That is the basic idea. Now let us move to the basic steps of the algorithm. That is the second and third step. So yeah, in this is actually a looping thing. You from the third step, you come back to step number 2. See this, yeah, it's a looping thing. So find an index I such that, so you have to search through every process that is available. Okay, say suppose you have P0, etc. till Pn minus 1. So you go through each and every process in this particular system, and you find for which value of I the finish is false. What does that indicate? It's equal. It's a comparative statement. We are checking whether finish of this process is false. It is false means what? It has still execution is pending. Its execution is pending. Now, there are some processes in between that may have satisfied its request, then its finish becomes true. Okay, so that is what we have written here. When does it become true? When allocation is equal to 0. So in this case, you can say in some case it may be true, in some case it may be false. So we have to find the index I such that finish of I is equal to false, is equal false. Now the next thing is request of I is less than equal to work. This less than has a special property here that we have already seen. Suppose we have three resources in the Banger's algorithm. I already told that. Suppose available of three resources are 3, 0, 1. Okay, and the request for three resources A, B, C are 1, 0, 0. Okay, if this is the case. So is it less than equal to availability? Is the request less than equal to availability? That is what we are trying to see. So what you have to do when a less than equal is actually available for all the three values less than equal. So first you have to compare A and A like this. 1 is less than 3. Yes. For B and B is 0 less than equal to 0. Yes. For C and C is 0 less than equal to 1. Yes. Because all of them are true, that means the entire less than equal to is true. So you have to do it for every one of them. Each one of them you have to check. Otherwise, it's not less than equal to. It will be greater than equal to. Okay. Now, this step, what you have to check here is request of I is less than equal to work. All of you know what is work. Work is the current available number of resources, current available resources. So request of I, is it less than equal to work? That means that if the bank, in the case of bank example that I gave, the bank currently has only 10 lakh to offer any customer. And suppose the customer is asking for 12 lakhs, then means because 12 lakhs is not less than equal to 10 lakhs, what a bank is currently available with the bank, then it cannot be satisfied. So such a case happens here also. You have to check the value of I such that what it requested for is less than equal to what is available. Because അവൈലബിളിനേക്കാളും കൂടുതൽ കൊടുക്കാൻ പറ്റത്തില്ലല്ലോ, ഉള്ള സാധനമല്ല കൊടുക്കാൻ പറ്റുള്ളതോ അതിൽ താഴെ ഉള്ളതോ. So that is why this index I you have to find where both the conditions are satisfied. So remember that both the conditions have to be satisfied, this and this. Okay, now this we scan through every index p0 to pn minus 1, that is pi. If both of them, so we find any first pi where this is false and where this is less than 1. Now in suppose you keep on doing this, while doing this is a loop, 2 and 3 are in loop, right? So suppose that you come to a situation where there exists no such I. ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു I എന്നുള്ള ഒരു വാല്യൂ pi എന്നുള്ള ഒരു നമുക്കൊരു പ്രോസസ് കിട്ടിയേ ഇല്ല. Then what you have to do is you have to go to step number 4. Step number 4 is actually the termination part where you determine whether a deadlock is there or not. Okay, we'll come to that later. So now suppose that you found an index I which satisfies these two conditions. Okay, now it satisfies these two conditions. What we have to do, the next step is we have to give it whatever it requires. So a process is there, it has requested for something. Because it is less than what is available, we give its request from the available. Now when you give its request from the available, it will use this plus what it has been already allocated. It has been in the previous state, has been allocated something by the CPU, right? So what it has been already allocated by the OS, sorry, but it has been already allocated something plus it requested something more. So all this thing will be returned back to the available port. This is the available pool. Something was there in the available pool. We took it as per our request. Then we returned this requested one as well as the allocated one back to the availability pool because it has already done its task. Because അതിന്റെ ജോലി തീർത്തോണ്ട് ഇനി എല്ലാം തിരിച്ചു കൊടുക്കണമല്ലോ, തിരിച്ച് സിസ്റ്റത്തിന് കൊടുത്തെങ്കിലല്ല the next process can use it, right? So that is why what you do here is the old work is the old availability plus what is available for the ith process. Not available, sorry, what is allocated already for the ith process. So the old work plus what is allocated for the ith process is summed together, which gives you the new work. What is the new work? It is nothing but the new availability. Now that means what? This process pi has completed its task. So it will return all the resources held by it back to the availability pool. Okay, so the old availability pool is what it was requested. You can say exactly same or lesser than that. So whatever was remaining earlier there plus what it was given earlier in the previous state, all those will be summed together and returned back as the new available or new work. Okay, instead of available, we are calling it as work here. And what we have to do, finish of I is equal to true. Because it completed a task, right? I crossed it out. So now what happens? Finish should be set to true, indicating this process does not have anything else to do now. Now we go back to step 2. Go back to step 2 and find the next value of 5. So suppose P0 satisfied this, P0 completed its task, it will give everything to the available pool. We come back to step number 2, we found that P2 is satisfying these two conditions. So it will also add on to the availability pool. And this goes on every time, 2 and 3, 2 and 3, it keeps on working until you find that there is no more process that can satisfy these two conditions. Okay. So now what happens? Now these two conditions are not satisfied. So we go to step number 4. Got it? Okay. Now let us come to step number 4. So step number 4, we are checking whether for some value I varying from 1 to n or 0 to n minus 1, if finish of any of the I, say process P1 was okay, P0 was okay, P5 was okay, they all are true. But the remaining ones like P2, P3, P4, P6, Pn minus 1, all these things are still false. Still false means what? Still false means what? It has not been able to satisfy its request. So that is why it is still in a pending state. It cannot complete its task because it could not be allocated the resources which it requested for. So if that is the case, then you can say those ith processes, that is pi, whichever was the process you found that finishes false, it is in a deadlock state. അപ്പം ട്രൂ ആയ ഫിനിഷ് ട്രൂ ആയ പ്രോസസ്സസിനെല്ലാം സാറ്റിസ്ഫൈ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റി, അപ്പൊ കുഴപ്പമില്ല, അവരെല്ലാം ഫിനിഷ് ചെയ്ത് എക്സിക്യൂഷൻ കംപ്ലീറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് പോയി. ബട്ട് സപ്പോസ് ദാറ്റ് ചില പ്രോസസ് PI എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ ചില പ്രോസസ്സുകൾ ഇപ്പോഴും ഫോൾസിൽ കിടക്കുവാണ്, ഫിനിഷ് ഇസ് ഇക്വൽ ടു ഫോൾസ് ആണെങ്കിൽ അതിന് ഇപ്പോഴും ഡെഡ് ലോക്ക് സ്റ്റേറ്റിലാണ് അതിന്റെ മീനിങ്. ദാറ്റ് മീൻസ് ഇറ്റ് ഇസ് സ്റ്റിൽ ഇൻ എ ഡെഡ് ലോക്ക് സ്റ്റേറ്റ്. So what can we detect from this algorithm is that deadlock has been detected because some of the finishes are still false. Okay, now with the help of an example, we'll learn this algorithm in detail. Suppose that there are 5 processes P0 to P4. So look at these P1, P0, P1, P2, P3, P4. All the 5 processes are here. Now, and then there are 3 resource types. So what are the 3 resource types? You can see here A, B, and C. Okay, A, B, and C. So A has maximum of 7 instances, B has a maximum of 2 instances, and C has a maximum of 6 instances. That is maximum A in the resource 7 instances only. If A is a printer, then that means there are 7 printers in total, maximum that can be given to a computer processes. Similarly, B is another resource, secondary storage device, then there are 2 instances of such devices. So, and so on. Now, at times stamp T0, suppose that in a time instance, you're looking at the state of the system with the process and the resource numbers and all. At T0, this is the situation, or this is the example we are looking at. The first thing that we have to determine is whether this is already in a safe state. We all know, because of we learned Banger's algorithm, we know how to find a safe state. So we draw the table in the manner. We first we write the process number, then we write the allocation table, then the request table, and then the available table. You can see in this allocation table, what does it contain? Suppose you take P0 as a process, then A contains 0 instances, B contains 1 instances, and C contains 0 instance. So 0, 1 instance, and 0th instance. What does that indicate? That means no resources has been allocated of A, and it does not require anything. Maybe it did not require anything in the earlier stage. That is why. And C is also not allocated, but 1 instance of B has been allocated. Similarly, if you take another example, P3, 2 instances of A, 1 instance of B, and 1 instance of C has been given to P3, and so on. Okay. Now, what about request? Request means what? It needs more. So P0 requires nothing. So it is 0, 0, 0. It does not require anything more. It can complete its task with the help of this. What about P1? P1 requires 202. What does that mean? That is A, 2 instances of A, 0 instance of B, and 2 instances of C. Okay, so that is the basic idea. And similarly for every other process. What is the available number of resources? 0, 0, 0. Why is that? Why is it 0? Because suppose that if the available is not given in the question paper in the exam, you can find it out yourself also. How do you find it out? You just have to add this column wise. What has already been allocated? Just sum it up. Here A is not given. Here 2 instance of A, 3 instance of A, and 2 instance of A. So 2 plus 3 plus 2, a total of 7 has been already allocated. And for B, 1 here and 1 here. So a total of 2 has already been allocated. And whereas for C, a 3, a 1, and a 2, that is totally 6 instances has already been allocated. Now you can see this thing is same as this, and this. Now what does that mean? Whatever was the maximum, all of them has been allocated. That is why it is 0 here. See, so nothing is remaining. Whatever was the maximum number of instances of each type of resource, all of them has been allocated for different processes in some order. So that is why available is currently equal to 0. So something has to come into available, then only the remaining requests can be satisfied. Got it? So we'll look at the first process now. Start in order. We'll look at the first process. What is the first process? P0. Now, our algorithm, we'll just write down here. The first step is you have to find, initially we initialize work is equal to available, and then we initialize all of the allocation which are not 0 as false. All the allocation which are not 0. Look at the allocations. Is any of the allocation completely 0? No, at least something is there, right? So it is, all of them are not non-zero. When I say allocation is equal to 0, it should be 0, 0, 0 for all the resource type. But in this case, B is given 1, here A is given twice, and so on. So that is why none of them are actually equal to 0. All of them are not equal to 0. So ellathinte finish ipa false nikku. All the finishes are in false. Okay. What is the next step? We have to find the index I. Here I is equal to 0 for us now. We have to see whether index of 0, finish of 0 is equal to false. Yes, it is false. And we see whether request of 0 is less than work. Okay, what is available now? 0, 0, 0. We know available is 0, 0, 0 in this table. So work is also equal to 0, 0, 0. Okay, we have to see whether request is less than equal to work. So we'll write it down here. Finish of I is equal false, and then we have to see whether request of process number I is less than equal to work. What is the current work value? 0, 0, 0. What is request of process number 0? Request of process number 0 is 0, 0, 0. So I write here 0, 0, 0. It does not require anything. So 0, 0, 0 is less than equal to 0, 0, 0, which is true. അപ്പം അതിന് ഇനി ഒരു റിക്വസ്റ്റ് വേണ്ട, ഉള്ളത് വെച്ച് അതിന് ജോലി ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും. So what does it already have? 0, 1, 0. So in our case, in a third step, what you have to do? We have to take the old work. What is the old work? Is the old available plus what is the allocation of 0th process? What is the allocation of 0th process? It is 0, 1, 0. See this? 0, 1, 0. So it becomes 0, 1, 0. Now add these two together one by one. So it becomes 0, 1, 0. 0 plus 0 is 0, 0 plus 1 is 1, and 0 plus 0 is 0. So that is why it goes from left to right. You have 0, 1, 0. Got it? So this is the new availability. What is the meaning of that? Process number 0, after requesting whatever it needed, if it got it from the available, it will release everything back to the availability pool. So let us write a new table entry. What is the current availability? What is the current availability? So now the current availability is 0, 1, 0. But new work nu parayunna endha? Current availability or current work variable? Okay, current work variable. Because process 0 satisfied everything, it releases this to the availability pool. Got it? Or you can write it here itself. 0, 1, 0, whatever it is. Same thing. Okay, now this has been set to true also. That means this is done with its execution. Now let us move. So available increase or process the current availability or the current work variable has increased. Okay. Now the next thing is for process P1. For process P1, is the finish equal to false? This is the first step. Remember, This finish is equal to false. Yes. Is the request of P1 less than equal to work? What is the current work variable now? It is 0. What is the current work variable? We'll see. It is 0, 1, 0. What is the request of process P1? Let us look at that. Request of process P1. It's over here. 202. Can 202 be satisfied by 010? No. Why? Because 2 is not less than equal to 0. 0 is less than equal to 1. That is true. But 2, again, the third 2 is not less than equal to 0. So it is false. Because it is false, we cannot find such a I. I told you in this case, both the conditions have to be satisfied, right? Both, it has to be false and it has to be less than. So in this case, the less than part did not work. So P1 cannot be satisfied for the time being. So it is still false. So let us move forward to find the next value of I. Next value of I is P2. Okay, I is equal to 2. So process number 2. Let us take whether its finish is equal to false. Yes, its finish is equal to false. No problem. Is its request less than equal to work? Now let us write here request of P2. What is that? 0, 0, 0. Is it less than equal to work? Yes, it did not require anything. It can complete its task with just the allocation. Now what it does is when you come back to the statement, current work is 0, 1, 0. Okay. Current work is 0, 1, 0. And the current allocation was, we look at that allocation. What is the allocation here? 303. So 010 plus 303. Now let us add 010 and 303. It gives you 313. So the new work or the new availability is 313. So let us write that over here 313. What does that indicate? നേരത്തെ ഇത്ര അവൈലബിൾ ആയിരുന്നു. പുതിയതായിട്ട് P2 അതിന്റെ ടാസ്ക് കംപ്ലീറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് കഴിയുമ്പം ഇതും അവൈലബിലിറ്റി പൂളിലോട്ട് റിട്ടേൺ ചെയ്യും. So sum of 303 and 010 is nothing but 313. Okay. So now this has been set to true and it has completed its task. Now you can see the availability pool has increased. Sorry. Now you can see the availability pool has increased. See this? Availability pool increase ആയതുകൊണ്ട് വേണമെങ്കിൽ ഇനി P1 satisfy ചെയ്യാറില്ല. We could have done that right now. But let us go forward for some more. Okay, we'll go forward and then come back to P1. Now we'll move at the third one, that is P3. Now P3 is finish less than finish equal to false. Is finish equal to false? Yes, finish is false. Is request of P3 less than equal to work? Let us change the work variable now. What is the work variable? 313. What is the request for P3? It is 100. So we'll write here 100. Is 100 less than 313? Yes, it is less than 313. So it is true. So that means that what it requested was only one instance of resource A and 0 of B and 0 C. അതിനകത്തുനിന്ന് കൊടുക്കാനുണ്ടല്ലോ. We have 3 here, right? So we can give 1. Okay, no problem. So when we give that 1, it will be satisfying and plus it has allocated 211 already. So 211 plus 1, the total thing, it will be returning back to this pool. So you have to add 313 and 211. Now when you add these two, you get 523. Got it? You get 523. So I hope this much is clear. 523, sorry, 1 second. It is 211, right? Sorry. So 211, whatever, this will become 4. Okay, 524. There's a correction. So adding 313 and 211, that is already allocated to P3, you'll get 524. Okay, now the next thing is this is being satisfied. So this is kept to true and P3 is done with. Now we have two options. Either you can go to P4 or you can go to P1. Both are there. Now suppose for the time being I take P1. Okay, I could have gone to P4 also. You can also go to P4, no issue. After P4, you can take P1. No issues are there. But suppose I'm taking P1 for the time being. So we have to check all these conditions again. Now, what is our current work availability or work? It is 524. Now, suppose I'm taking P1 once again. This is P1. P1, what is its request? Its request is 202. So we have to see whether 202 is less than equal to 524. Yes, it is less. Because it is less, so its request can be satisfied. So it returns everything that has been allocated to it back to the memory pool. Okay, it returns it. So that means you have to add 200 to this particular already available thing. Now it becomes 724. Got it? So we're going to add that. So I'll rub the middle part. Okay. So we added 724 along with this. Let's rewrite it. 524. Then now it becomes 724. Got it? Now, so P1 has been satisfied. It returned what has been allocated to it. 200 return ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഇങ്ങനെ വന്നത്. So now we change this to true and this has been allocated. Now let us return to the last process. The second step, we find another I where finish is equal to false. Yes, finish is false. Is request of P4 less than equal to work. What is the current work value? 724. What is the request of P4? 002. Now let us write here 002. Now 002 is less than equal to 724. Yes, that is also true. Because that is true, it will return all its allocated thing back to the memory pool. So let us add 002 along with this. It becomes 726. Okay, so I'll just erase the sum part and the final value is 726. It is same as the maximum number of instances. See this 7, 2 and 6. So the available thing now becomes 726. So what we found is a safe state. All of you know what's a safe state in Banger's algorithm. The same thing happens here. That is, we start from P2, then we move to P2. Sorry, we start from P0, we move to P2, P3, P1, P4, or P4, P1 in a reverse order. And we found that all of the finish has been set to true. All of the finish has been set to true. If all of the finish is true, means what? There is no deadlock. Every process could complete timely. Got it? So this is a safe state. Is there any deadlock to be detected? No. Now, our example is deadlock detection. So we need, so starting from a safe state, we are going to increase the number of requests so that we approach a deadlock. Suppose that P2, a process, request one additional instance of type C. So let us look at here. This is the additional instance that P2 has requested. Look at the previous example. What was the instance there? It was 0. But ഇവിടെ മാറിയിട്ട് ഇപ്പം 1 ആയി. That is P2 is requesting for type resource type C, one instance of resource type C. Now this is the new request table. In such a case, will there be any deadlock? Okay, now let us come back to this figure and understand it much more better. Okay, we'll come back to, and so currently available work, current work variable, and we have changed the request. This table has changed from 0 to 1 over here. Now we are trying to solve this. When we are trying to solve this, let us take the first process P0. Okay, now what happens in P0 is, you can see here, available is 0, right? And so request is also 0. Request is also 0. So request is less than, we are checking. Finish ellam false and other than imagine 0. There's all the finish are equal to false. So don't check that condition again and again because we already learned how to do it. So we'll just check whether the request is less than equal to work. Request of that ith process less than equal to work. So if you're taking P0, you can see here request of this particular process is less than equal to what is currently available. Currently available is 000, right? So it is less. So no problem. So it will release this thing to the memory pool. So now it becomes 010. Now let us move to P1. So P0 is satisfied. Let us move to P1. P1, the request is 200. Is 200 less than equal to 010? No. So it cannot be satisfied for the time being. It is still false. Let us move to P2. What is the request for P2? 001. 001 but 0 is okay, 0 is okay. The second is 0 is less than equal to 1. That is also okay. But the third instance is 1. 1 is greater than 0. So that is, we are not able, because we do not have availability. How can we give one resource of C? It is not possible. So that is why this also cannot be satisfied. Got it. Now we move on to P3. P3 is 100. Again, the same problem. The resource A is 0 here. We cannot give even one resource also. We cannot, it's not available for giving it. So that is why P3 also cannot be satisfied. It is still false. Now let us look at P4. P4 is 002. 002. ഇവിടെ 2 instance കൊടുക്കാനുണ്ടോ? Do we have 2 instance to give for C, resource C? It's not there. So this also cannot be satisfied. In the earlier case, if you remember, here it was 0. So when 0 was there, P2 was able to release 303 to the pool. But in this case, that condition has changed. In the second case, when the request has increased, it has become 1, right? So it is also not able to give. So only process P0 was able to give to the memory pool or the memory availability pool to increase the number of available resources, and rest of the processes did not contribute to the increasing of the current available or the current work variable. So that is why all these processes, that is P1, P2, P3, P4, all the processes from P1, P2, P3, P4, a deadlock exists. So P1 is deadlock, P2 is deadlock, P3 as well as P4 is also deadlock. Only with the resource of P0, we could not satisfy P1 to P4. So this is how we detect a deadlock in a system, a current situation. So in the earlier case, it was safe, and later on when one P2, one process increased its request, a deadlock occurred. So a deadlock occurred, and how did we detect it? Because by checking whether it's in a safe state, again, we found that we could not satisfy any of them. So we detected that there is a deadlock. Got it? Now, next is we have to look at recovery. So in before coming to recovery, just a revision. So we learned what is deadlock detection, and when in single instance is there, how we draw a wait for graph, which is a solution from a resource allocation graph. It's a shorter version of that. And if there is a cycle in the wait for graph, that means there is a deadlock. Suppose you have multiple instances, then you have an algorithm similar to the Banger's algorithm, and based on which we can find out whether there exists a deadlock or not. Okay. Okay, looking at recovery from deadlock, till now we learned a detection algorithm based on single instance as well as multiple instances. So once we detect that a deadlock has occurred, then several other alternatives that are available actually. So one possibility that is there is given over here, that is to inform the operator. Operator means the person who is in charge, you can say. He or she may be the admin, or maybe the user, or maybe another application, whatever it is. So manually means it will be referring to users. So you can inform the operator that a deadlock has occurred. So if a deadlock has occurred, then the operator can, what he or she can do is he can deal with the deadlock manually, maybe by stopping all the processes that are causing the deadlock, or some other means of doing it. So that is one possibility. That is manual termination of the processes that are creating the deadlock. Another possibility is to let the system recover from the deadlock automatically. That is another possibility. So you let the system on the computer recover itself from the deadlock automatically. So what are the two ways for breaking a deadlock? That is what we are going to look at. So two options for that. A deadlock can be once it is detected, how we can recover from it or come out of it. So one option is to simply abort one or more processes. That is, we purposefully, you can say, terminate one or more processes, either one or more than one processes, so as to break this particular deadlock. So this deadlock, we know it occurs when you have a circular wait condition. So that is, one process is waiting for another process, is waiting for another resource, which is held by another process, and it is waiting for another resource, which is held by another process. So you have a condition like that. So you abort at least one of the process, so that the second process can get access to that resource which the other one is holding. So that is one option. Another option is to preempt some resources from one or more deadlock processes. So one option is you terminate it. Another option is you preempt it. So preemption is something different. So you preempt some resources from one or more deadlock processes. So manually you will be preempting means you're changing it from execution by the CPU, and you so in such a way that the process which is deadlock will not be in any more deadlocks. So that is another option. So we'll be looking at both the techniques. That is the technique we learn here. Either we abort one or more processes or we preempt some of the resources. So that is what we're going to look at. So the first one is process termination. Okay, the first operation was aborting or the process or terminating the process. So what are the options available for process termination? So we can see to eliminate deadlocks by aborting a process, we can use any of the two methods. The first one is abort all the deadlock processes. So one option is you abort all the deadlock processes. So naturally, whenever there is a deadlock, everything, all that cycle, the entire cycle will be broken, but it is at a greater expense, you can say. So why? Because the deadlock process may have executed for a longer period of time. You can say it has been working since the start, or it has completed most of its execution part except for the last few time moments or something like that. So and what happens is towards the end, suddenly when it came to a deadlock, all the time it wasted, that is the time involved in execution, all the resources that it used, everything goes waste because we are going to abort that particular process or the set of processes. So you can say all the effort that it took was wasted because we aborted the all the deadlock processes, and it will have to restart once again whenever possible. So another option is we abort only one process at a time until the deadlock cycle is eliminated. In this case, we abort all the processes. That was the difference here. But in this case, we are having just aborting just one process at a time until the deadlock cycle is eliminated. Say suppose we have many processes P1, P2, etc., P5, etc. Okay, so we try with the, suppose these are the list of deadlocked processes. Okay, we found out using some algorithm, we found out which are the deadlock processes and we listed them, and then we try to uh, uh, terminate, or you can say abort one by one. This first initially I took P1 and I see whether the deadlock cycle is eliminated. If not, I go for the second one. If not, I go for the third one, and so on. So this way, slowly we compute whether any of the processes have to be eliminated. So every time, what is the overhead involved in this is that some overhead is involved here also. It is that the deadlock detection algorithm must be invoked every time to detect whether any of the processes are in a deadlock state. So in the previous one, we are going to, once we run the algorithm, we get the list of deadlock processes and we can eliminate all of them. But in the second one, every time we have to check whether a deadlock is there, a deadlock is there. Every time we have to check that. And then only we can eliminate the cycle one by one. So these are the two ways of, you can say, terminating a process by aborting either all of them or one process at a time. Now, aborting a process actually is not an easy task, you can say. For example, if you consider a process, okay, which was you can say in the midst of updating a file, some file updations was going on, that process requirement was it needs to update a file, and suppose you are terminating it purposefully, what will happen? That file will be left in an incorrect state because you are writing something onto the file or you're updating, right? So the file which saves the status of its content, you can say it will be left in a incorrect state. Also say another example, you're printing data onto a printer. So you can say you're in the middle of printing. So something must have been already printed and the remaining of the paper is wasted, you can say. Or the system to print another data, if something goes wrong in between, you'll be stuck in between. So you will have to restart the entire printer so that you can start with a fresh page. So all these things would have been maybe have to be done manually. So you can say these are the issues in aborting a process in between. So we do not know what state it was, whether it was in the beginning, middle, or end. But if partial termination is used, you can say if the partial termination method is used, then we must determine which are the deadlock process that must be terminated? Because many are there, we must determine the process terminate, and there should be a decision based on that. So that decision is actually similar to what you know as a CPU scheduling decision. So some decision has to be taken on which process or processes, both, either one or many, should be terminated. Okay, that is what we have to decide. Now, the question is, how do we decide that? Is we should actually choose those processes which incur minimum cost. So you can say the processes which incur minimum cost. So generally speaking, we should do it that way. That is the one which about those processes or about terminate those processes that will, whose termination will incur in minimum cost, you can say. Angana aa oru economic one aanengi, you can say that adu veliya prashanam illa, adini poyalum it doesn't matter. Okay. So, but unfortunately, it is not a proper definition. What do you mean by minimum cost? So we may have to look at many other things also. For example, many other factors are listed here. What the priority of the process is. Okay. In which priority level it stands. Is it, if it's a very high priority process, if I cancel it or terminate it suddenly, will it affect the entire working of the system? It may. So that is not so feasible. Then how long the process has already computed. Okay. And how much longer it has left to be completed. So you can say, suppose that it took a lot of time to compute. So it took so many resources, it took so much effort so as to complete its designated task. Then how much longer it needs. So we can decide maybe based on that. If it's already about to near to completion, why terminate it? We can wait for some time so that if some other process can be terminated, then and this can complete, then we should go for the other one, not the first one. So that is one possibility. Another factor is how many and what type of resources the process has used. For example, whether the resources are simple to preempt. So you can see if they're using some important resources, or is it possible for us to preempt those resources? How many of them they are using, what type that resources, or if all these factors can be considered to decide whether a process should be terminated or not. Okay, whether it's an important process, we can maybe determine with the help of resources. Then the next one is how many more resources the process needs in order to complete. That is, we know that the process has already processes or process is already holding some of the resources. Now, how much more resources it needs to complete? Will the system be able to provide it if it is deadlocked? No. So somebody has to terminate. So if other processes are terminated and they release the resources, will this one be satisfied? And so on. So how much more resources are needed? Then how many processes will need to be terminated? That itself is one of a factor. Whether the process is interactive or batch kind, maybe that's a decision to take when process has to be terminated. So these are the basic ideas of process termination. That is the first one that we learn. So first one is to abort one or more process, and either we can do abort all of them or we do it one at a time. Okay, that is the basic idea of process termination. Now the second one is actually preemption, resource preemption. You can see here, this one, preempt some of the resources. So we'll move on to that one. So to eliminate deadlocks using this resource preemption, we should actually preempt some resources, some of the resources, not all, some of the resources from the processes, and give this resources to other processes until the deadlock cycle is broken. So we are preempting means what? We are moving it from one point to another. We are purposefully doing it even though it did not complete its task. So we preempt some of the resources from the process and we give these resources to others so that the cycle is broken somehow. Now, what are the ways this preemption can be done? So there are three issues. Even though you do this preemption, it's required to deal with deadlocks, but three issues need to be addressed for this case. So one of the thing is selecting a victim. Victim that is the person who is going to be, or the resource which is going to be and the sorry, the resource which is going to be preempted and based on which the process that will be affected. Okay, that is known as a victim. So which resources and which processes are to be preempted? So when I say the resource is preempted, actually it is affecting some process also, right? So both of them are there. So you can call together, this is a victim. So selecting a victim is simply determining which process and which resource are to be preempted. So what is the basic aim, like in process termination that we saw earlier? We have to determine the order of preemption so that we have to minimize the cost. That is the basic aim of selecting a victim. So cost factors may basically that is include parameters like the number of resources a deadlock process is holding, the amount of time the process has thus consumed. So I'll just write it here. That is some factors it has to look into. What is meant by cost? Number of resources a deadlocked process is holding. So if you have to release a lot of them, maybe the cost is more. That much time has been spent on this resource and it's not worth it. Okay. The second one is, you can say the amount of time the process has consumed so far. Amount of time process has consumed so far. Okay. So how much time it has spent for doing its task, how many number of resources it is holding. So based on this, if you are able to minimize the cost, the order of preemption with minimum cost we have to do first, and that way we can select a particular victim for preemption. Now the second criteria that need to be addressed for preemption is rollback. So rollback, you must have learned in like in DBMS, you must have already learned that the concepts of rolling back is nothing but you go to a previous state which was a better one. Okay, that is known as a rollback. Suppose if we preempt a resource from a process, then what is to be done with that process? There was a process P1 which was holding some resource R1, R2, etc. I preempted some of them. Now, what is to be done with this process? Where can it continue with its normal execution, or because some resources are not there, what will it do to to handle that and all those things? So what we can do is we must roll back this process. If resource miss a process uണ്ടല്ലോ, we must roll back that process to some safe state. So you move it to some safe state, earlier state, somewhere where deadlock was not there. That is the safe state, right? And restart the process for that state. Okay, restart it from that state. That is one way. So actually it is very difficult for us to determine what was a safe state. So the basic idea is just like termination. You abort the process and restart it from the beginning. ശരിക്കും പറഞ്ഞാൽ സേഫ് സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഏതാന്ന് നമുക്ക് കണ്ടുപിടിച്ചെടുക്കാൻ ഭയങ്കര പാടാ. It's difficult for us to find the safe state. Then you can say the previous method that we learned, process termination, it will become equal to that. So if you're not able to move it to a safe state, then basically it's like aborting the entire process. Resource എല്ലാം പറിച്ചു മാറ്റുമ്പോഴത്തേക്ക് you just terminate the process and restart it again. It's similar to process termination. And the third one is starvation. Now, there's an issue that occurs that is known as starvation. How do we ensure that starvation does not occur? That is, every time you're preempting the resources and you find that this process is a very low priority. Say, for example, process P1 is a very low priority. So I determine the preemption of resources based on the priority. Every time, whenever a deadlock occurs, I go and get P1 and I remove its resource and make it restart. So every time I keep on doing this. So what happens is P1 is never able to complete its task. So what happens? It will lead to starvation of P1. So maybe due to rollback also, maybe P1 is again restarted. So whatever be the case, you can say P1 can never get a chance to complete its task. So what happens is it can lead it to starvation. So these are the basic ideas. So what we must do is we must ensure that a process that is picked up as a victim, we know that these are the issues that we need to address. So if we pick up a process that as a victim, only a finite number of times. Thank you.